All right, Rabbi, say good morning. Let us begin. I want to begin by thanking our sponsors for today's shir. To thank our Talmud Torah sponsors, Yoel Sara Kelman, for dedicating all of the shiurim and drushos this month in honor of the birth of their daughter, Oriya Tahel. We hope that in Meretz Hashem, in the merit of this little girl, we hope all the couples praying for children will soon have their tefilos answered. Amen b'karov. To thank Teri Czinn for dedicating all the shiurim and drushos this month in honor of their grandchildren, Adin, Tzvi, and Naftali, Moshe. And our Talmud Torah sponsors, Shirley Elbaum Family, in commemoration of the yahrzeit of Shirley's husband, Gerald Elbaum, Yaakov Kopel, R Avraham Menachem. We hope that in the merit of our Talmud Torah, all of the neshamas will have an aliyah and the families a nechama. And with that, let us begin. So we have a beautiful Gemara ahead of us today. Today's daf is Chav Zayin 27, and we are picking up on Chavav Amud Beis 16 lines up from the bottom of the So I know you probably were unable to sleep last night because we left off in the midst of a riveting machlokes, a three-way machlokes regarding duchening. So remember again, we had Rabbi Meir. Rabbi Meir said that halacha lamaisa, we duchen at every tefillah. Shachris, Musaf, Mincha, Ne'ilah. Rabbi Yehuda, who said that at Shachris and Musaf we duchen, Mincha and Ne'ilah we don't duchen. And then Rabbi Yossi, who said Shachris and Musaf we duchen, Ne'ilah we duchen, Mincha we don't duchen. To which the Gemara says, what are they arguing about? Rabbi Meir Savra Kol Yoma Taima Mai Lo Parsi Kani Adayu Minchasa. So we'll say, let's handle this. Rabbi Meir says, in general, why is it that halacha lamaisa kohanim don't duchen at mincha? Rabbi say, just on a stam day. Think about this just a moment. Even us who don't have duchening in Chutz La'aretz, we have Birchas Kohanim. So we recite Birchas Kohanim at Shachris, Musaf. Why don't we recite Birchas Kohanim by Mincha? I'm leaving aside fast days right now. Why don't we generally recite Birchas Kohanim during fast days? Very simple. D'chol Yom HaShiach Shichrus. Because every day, now also we have to define this correctly. Literally translated, it means because every day drunkenness is common. Now, that doesn't mean that Kohanim have issues. I mean, Kohanim do have issues. I want to be clear. The Gemara says they have temper issues. They have anger issues. That's Kohanim Ragzonin Ninhu. That's, remember again, the other side of the coin of passion is kaas, is anger, right? Kohanim are filled with incredible energy and passion. If they misdirect it, it's anger. If they direct it, it's incredible passion. So in general, what the Gemara is saying is like this: people drink wine. You are not allowed to duchen under the influence. It's mamish a DUI. Right? So I'll say, so again, we'll discuss that halacha about duchening after drinking wine in just a little bit. But the idea over here is, on a regular day, a person's drinking wine. Once a person is drinking wine, they're not permitted to duchen. Therefore, again, the Gemara says, I'm sorry. So, Rabbi Yehuda Savar Shachris, Musaf Techol Yoma Lo Shchiach Shichrus Lo Gazu Rabbanon Mincho Ne'ilah Techol Yoma Shchicha Shichrus Gazu Rabbanon. So, also Rabbi Yehuda's sheet is very simple. Rabbi Yehuda says there's no concern that anyone is drinking wine during Shachris and Musaf, right? There's no concern about that. There's no Shichrus during Shachris and Musaf. So I have a lot to say about this, about how you see that Chazal could not fathom the idea about people going out before Musaf to drink something. It was unheard of, such a concept like this. Different discussion. And anyway, to say the idea the Gemara is saying over here is in the morning, there's no issue of Shichrus. However, again, by the time we come to Mincha Ne'ilah time, again, is afternoon, Shchiach Shichrus. So we'll say, this is the position of Rabbi Yehuda. He's holding, I'm sorry, I skipped. Rabbi Meir Sara Kol Yoma Taima Milo Parsi Kani Adayu V'Minchas Mishum Shichrus Ha'id Meleka Shachris. So we'll say, Rabbi Meir is saying like this: on a regular day, why don't Kohanim duchen during Mincha time? Just on a regular day, because there's a concern of wine consumption. Rabbi Meir says that's fine. On fast days, and for that matter, Ma'amados, is there a concern of wine consumption? No. So as such, says Rabbi Meir, every day a Kohen should be able to duchen, every fast day, and Ma'amalos, which are also fast days, you could duchen all the tefilos. So this is Rabbi Meir's shita. Therefore, Rabbi Meir holds on a fast day or on Ma'amados or Yom Kippur, of course, as well. You could duchen Shachris, Musaf, Mincha, Ne'ilah, because the only reason on a regular day Kohanim don't duchen Mincha, Ne'ilah is because of a concern of shichrus, wine consumption. That concern doesn't apply on any fast day. Therefore, Rabbi Meir holds on a fast day, duchen all of the tefilos. Number one, Rabbi Yehuda Savar, Shachris u'mincha d'chol yom lo shiach shichrus l'gazu v'rabanan. Mincha ne'ilah d'chol yom shicha shichrus gazu v'rabanan. Go say, Rabbi Yehuda on the other hand holds like this. You have to be concerned that whatever happens on a fast day is going to what? Be replicated on a regular day. So in general, we're never concerned for Shachris and Musaf, because people don't drink in the morning. We're not concerned for Shachris and Musaf. Therefore, again, on any day, Shachris and Musaf, you duchen. What we're concerned about is as follows, that if we have Kohanim duchening on Mincha and Ne'ilah of fast days, people, we'll say, in general, you have to assume people are not sensitive to nuance. So people, most generally, will assume whatever is permitted one day is permitted on a different day. So once the once the general population sees that the Kohanim are duchening Mincha and Ne'ilah of a fast day, they could easily assume that what? They could do it on a different day as well. And that's going to be concerning, because halacha lemaisa, you really can't duchen by mincha time on a regular day out of a concern of wine consumption. Therefore, says Rabbi Yehuda, says the easiest way to avoid all confusion is what? We always limit duchening to what? Shachris and Musaf. That's it. Just learn it to Shachris and Musaf. This way, there's never any confusion, and there's never concern that a Kohen may come to go ahead and duchen after having consumed wine. That's Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yossi Savar, what's Rabbi Yossi Shita? He holds Mincha di'isei b'chol yom ha'gazu v'rabanan. Let's remember again, what did Rabbi Yossi hold? Rabbi Yossi, remember, you have Rabbi Meir saying that halacha l'maisa you could duchen at every tefillah. Why? Because in general, the only reason you don't duchen by Mincha time on a regular day is why? Wine, potential wine consumption. On fast days, that doesn't apply. Therefore, Meir says, duchen every tefillah. Shachris, Musaf, Mincha, Ne'ilah. Rabbi Yehuda, we can't do it, because if we allow people to come to duchen during Mincha, Ne'ilah time of a fast day, they'll come to do that on a regular day as well. Therefore, Rabbi Yehuda always caps duchening at Shachris and Musaf. Now, Rabbi Yossi has an interesting shita. What does Rabbi Yossi hold? When do you duchen? Shachris, Musaf, no Mincha, but Ne'ilah. What's the pshat there? Listen to this. Rabbi Yossi Savar Mincha di'isei b'chol yom ha'gazu v'rabanan. So Rabbi Yossi will say like this. You're right. He agrees with Rabbi Yehuda in principle. You can't have Kohanim duchen by Mincha even on a fast day, because they're going to get confused, and they're going to people will end up thinking that you could duchen during Mincha of a regular day as well, and that's dangerous, because on a regular day there may be an issue of wine consumption. However, Ne'ilah dilesei b'chol yom ha'gazu v'rabanan. Both say Ne'ilah is such a unique tefillah, because Ne'ilah, at least according to the Mishnah, was only davened fast days. We know Ne'ilah by Yom Kippur, but Ne'ilah was a tefillah by most fast days. So no one's going to confuse Ne'ilah with what happens during the rest of the week. So because there's no confusion, Rabbi Yossi says, let the Kohanim duchen by Ne'ilah. So we'll say, a really fascinating machlokes. Again, three-way machlokes. Rabbi Meir is saying, duchen every tefillah, Shachris, Musaf, Mincha, Ne'ilah. Rabbi Yehuda, only Shachris and Mincha, because we're concerned that people are going to get confused if they see you duchening Mincha time and Ne'ilah time, or Mincha/Ne'ilah on a fast day. They'll come to do that on a regular day, and that could be an issue of shichrus. Rabbi Yossi, duchen Shachris, Musaf, don't duchen Mincha, but you could duchen Ne'ilah. Sham Rabbi Yehuda Marav, Halach Rabbi Meir. Rabbi Yehuda said in Mavrav that the halacha follows Rabbi Meir. Namely, again, I both said that what? We duchen at every tefillah. On a fast day, we duchen at every... By the way, it's not just a fast day. It's Taanis, Ma'amados, Yom Kippurim. Right? We'll duchen at every single tefillah. Shachris, Musaf, Mincha, Ne'ilah. Rabbi Yochanan Amar, Nahagua Am Rabbi Meir. So I will say, you have over here Rav saying that the halacha is like Rabbi Meir. Rabbi Yochanan saying that Nahagua Am Rabbi Meir. The people conduct themselves like Rabbi Meir. The Rava Amar Minhag ki Rabbi Meir. And Rava said, no, the minhag is like Rabbi Meir. So the Gemara says, what does that mean? Aren't they all saying the same thing, that the halacha follows Rabbi Meir? No, watch this. Man da Amar halacha ki Rabbi Meir dashin alei bepirkei. Shabbos, listen to this. Rav who said that the halacha follows Rabbi Meir, that literally means that halacha l'maisa, we would go ahead and teach it publicly. We would teach Rabbi Meir's shita publicly, that halacha l'maisa, we pass like Rabbi Meir, we duchen at all 4 tefilos. Man damra minog, the one who said that the minog is like Rabbi Meir, midrash lo dashinon, aruye morinon. So we'll say the one who says that the minog is like Rabbi Meir would say like this: we don't explicitly teach it in public lectures, but halacha l'maisa, if somebody asks, we'll instruct them to follow the position of Rabbi Meir. Uman da amar nagu, the one who says nagu, the minog is like Rabbi Meir, what does that mean? Aruye lo morinon, the avid v'lo mahadrinon be. What that means, I will say, is we don't teach it publicly. We won't even proactively instruct people to follow that position, but if someone conducts themselves like Rabbi Meir, it's fine. It's fine. So it's a very interesting 3 different approaches. So it seems to me you have 3 different approaches to rallying around the position of Rabbi Meir. But the shaila is how exactly we promote that shita. Do we publicly promote it? Do we privately promote it? Or do we not promote it at all? But if ex post facto people rely on it, it's totally fine. All right, so listen to this. We'll say, here we go. Rav Nachman says, no, halacha Rabbi Yossi. Rav Nachman says, no, not true. The halacha is like Rabbi Yossi, which Avosai means what? What was Rabbi Yossi shita? Remember what was Rabbi Yossi? Shachris, Musaf, no mincha, but ne'ilah. V'halacha Rabbi Yossi. And the Gemara says, and indeed, the halacha follows Rabbi Yossi. Avosai, that's how the Gemara concludes. The Gemara says, really? V'ha'idna, my time aparsi kohani yadai b'mincha sad Taanisa. But that's not true. Because I will say, look at what we do contemporarily. What do we do today? Right? We duchen by mincha on a fast day. I will say, again, remember, whenever we're talking about duchening, just for our purposes, just put in there what? Birchas Kohanim. Right? Elokeinu v'elokei avosinu barachinu b'aracham shleshas b'torah, haksuva de Moshe, right? So again, just put that in. We say that on a fast day. We say that on a fast day. And Eretz Yisrael they'll duchen on a fast day. So the Gemara says, I don't understand. You just told me that halacha follows Rabbi Yossi, so that on a fast day you'll duchen shachris, musaf, and ni'ilah, but no duchening by mincha. But what about that contemporarily? We do duchen by mincha. How do you reconcile that? Listen to this. This is incredible. Kevan de besamach l'shkias hachama kaparasi ketfilas ni'ilah damya. Listen to this, Rabbi. This is really very interesting. When do people typically daven mincha on a fast day? Late in the day. Since we normally daven mincha late in the day, meaning right up to shkia, right up by shkia, on a fast day, so mincha is kind of like ne'ilah. Now, I will say, look at Rashi. This is really fascinating. It's one of these interesting Rashis also because it gives you a little bit of a window into what was done. Look at Rashi. Kevan de mesamach l'shkias hachama. It's about 4 lines up before Rashi gets wide. Kevan de mesamach l'shkias hachama. Shema'arichen ad shkias hachama mispalin kol shah. Ve'enon holchin lebeis hakneses mishesh sha'os u'mechza u'lamayla kimo shahayu osin la'osin emrus. Listen to this. It used to be the more common practice that when would you daven mincha? When would you daven mincha? Mincha gidola. Mincha gidola, 6.5 hours into the day. That's when people are typically daven mincha. So you daven mincha gidola. You daven ma'ariv at whatever it is, sometime after shkir, after tzeis. So that was the time that it was common to daven mincha time. So we'll say, let's say in a perfect day where sunrise is 6 o'clock, sunset is 6 o'clock, you would typically daven mincha at 12:30 in the afternoon, called mincha gidola, which also makes sense, by the way, why there's a concern of shichros, why there's a concern. And we'll say shichros doesn't have to mean a person is getting drunk. It just means that a person is consuming wine. So, which makes sense. It's around lunchtime. So listen to this. So the Gemara says, but on a fast day, people didn't daven mincha gidola. Instead, more often, people would daven late in the day, right after, which makes sense, because everybody would be gathered for mincha. Remember, you have kriyas HaTorah by mincha as well, and then you'd be able to daven ma'ariv not so far after that. So since on a fast day, people more commonly daven mincha late in the day, mincha was kind of treated like ni'ilah. Or in other words, Rabbi Yossi says, I agree that duchening during mincha on a fast day is dangerous because it can lead to confusion. And people may come to think that you could duchen during mincha on a regular day as well. But I'll tell you why there's no concern of confusion. Why not? Why not? it was davened at a dramatically different time. Mincha on a fast day was more often davened at the time of Ne'ilah than at the time of a typical mincha. So because of that, people won't get confused. And I both say, so the Gemara says, so that's how the sugya ends. So the Gemara ends by saying the halacha follows Rabbi Yossi, namely we'll duchen at Shachris, at Musaf, and at Ne'ilah. But what about the fact that today we even duchen during mincha of a fast day? That's because today, during fast days, we daven mincha later, and mincha more takes on the appearance of Ne'ilah. And I both say this is indeed codified in Shulchan Aruch. So the Shulchan Aruch writes, this is in Siman Kuf Chav Tes Sif Aleph. I'll just read to you the Mechaber. Mechaber says, Ein Nisias Kapayim Ela B'Shachris, B'Musaf, U'B'Ne'ilah, B'Yom Sheyesh Bo Ne'ilah K'mo B'Yom Kippurim. Avalo b'mincha deshchicha shichrus ba'osa shah shema yeheh kohen shikr. The Gemara says so again. Mamish Shulchan Aruch quotes the position of Rabbi Yossi. That's how he paskin. So on a general day, we'll duchen shachris musaf, but and Ne'ilah, but not mincha. Why not mincha? Because we're concerned that the kohen may have consumed wine. The gazru b'mincha shal Taanis atu mincha shal shar yamim. And halacha l'maisa, again, we won't have you duchen on a mincha of a fast day, lest you come to get confused, and then duchen during mincha of a regular day. So the Gemara said, Aval b'Taanis she'in bo Ne'ilah, ha'olu tfilas mincha samach l'shkias hachama, hu dama l'tfilas Ne'ilah, ve'ina mischalefes b'mincha shal shar yamim. However, look what the Shulchan Aruch says. On a fast day where there is no Ne'ilah, which is when? For us, every single fast day besides Yom Kippur, we will duchen during mincha, because since mincha is davened so late in the day, it's more like Ne'ilah. No one's going to come to confuse it with mincha of a regular day, which was typically davened much earlier. Hilchach yesh ba nesias kapayim. Therefore, again, halacha l'maisa, we duchen. And Rabbi say this is indeed how we paskin halacha l'maisa. We duchen by shachris, we duchen by musaf, we never duchen by mincha. We never duchen by mincha. We don't duchen by mincha. Again, out of a general concern that if we duchen by mincha on a fast day, you may come to allow duchening by mincha on a regular day, which would be potentially dangerous. However, again, the one exception, and Ne'ilah we duchen, the one exception will be mincha of a fast day for which there is no Ne'ilah, where we're davening mincha much later on in the day, and therefore there's no concern of confusing that mincha with mincha of a typical day. And I will say, that is indeed halacha l'maisa. Just while we're on this topic, and while this is still very troubling to me, because again, as I mentioned yesterday, after having a whole Chanukah Baruch Hashem of duchening, mat mishbirchas kohanim every single day, to come back and not have duchening is quite sad. So what's the pshat? So I just want to point out, because this is very important halacha that people may not be aware of. Just a page earlier, in Siman Kuf Chav Ches, the end of Sif Mem Dalid. End of Sif Mem Dalid. It's Sif Mem Dalid. The Shulchan Aruch begins, actually, I have to do this very quickly, with an interesting case, which is Kohen Afa Pishu Panoi Noses Kapov. Shulchan Aruch makes a very interesting thing. The Shulchan Aruch says, even though a Kohen is single, he can still duchen. Now I will say, why would you think that a Kohen who's single can't duchen? I will say, the job of the Kohanim, who go ahead and duchen, their job is to bring down the Shekhinah, to bring down the divine presence into this world. The Gemara says that ultimately, again, only a person who is married has the ability to experience true simcha. So one would have thought that a Kohen who is single can't duchen. Kamashkan the Shulchan Aruch says he can duchen. Now the Ramah has a whole discussion about this. Now why is this important? Rabbi say, listen to the words of the Ramah. Bechol medinos elu she'enosin kapeim ela biyamtiv. In all the other countries outside of Eretz Yisrael, we do not duchen. Right? And when I say duchen, we don't have the Kohanim duchening, right? Except on Yom Tiv. Why? Mishum sha'az shiruyim besimchas Yom Tiv v'tov leiv hu yivarich. Because we'll say ultimately again, the requisite simcha that one needs for birchas Kohanim is not present in Galus, except on Yom Tiv. Except on Yom Tiv. In Galus, in the diaspora, we don't have the requisite daily simcha to allow for birchas kohanim. Masha'en kain b'shar yomim afilu shabbos hashana shetrudim beherhurim al michiyasam. Because I was saying Golus, there's often a preoccupation with what? With parnasa. It's interesting. There's a preoccupation with earning one's livelihood. So because there's a preoccupation with earning one's livelihood, therefore there's not the requisite simcha. The al bittul malachtam. Va'afilu b'yamtiv, we'll say even on Yom Tiv, by the way, here's what's interesting. On Yom Tiv, when do we duchen? This is, we just said we pass like Rabbi Yossi. So when should we be duchening on Yom Tiv? Think about this just a moment. When should we be duchening? Shachris and Musaf. But we don't do that. In fact, the only time we actually duchen is when? Is by Musaf. What's the pshat? Says the Ramah, Afilu b'yamtiv einosin kapayim ela betfilas Musaf. Why? Sheyotzin azmi beis hakneses v'yismuchu b'simchas yamtiv. Because Musaf already is close enough to the end of shul. What's good about the end of shul? Well, of course, what's good about the end of shul? That's the end of shul. That's Aleph. And also, we go home to have our su'udah. Since we're very close to the physical enjoyment of Yom Tov, there's a special elated status as a simcha, and therefore, again, we're able to go ahead and duchen. So again, I just want to point out, this is the Ramah. This is the source. It happens to be, it's part of a very big halachic discussion as to why we don't duchen outside of Eretz Yisrael during the week, and on just Stam Shabbos. And in fact, again, rabbinic literature is filled with stories of communities who tried to institute this practice of duchening outside of Eretz Yisrael, even during the week or regular Shabbos. And again, unfortunately, good things did not occur as a result of the institution of those practices. In any event, the whole idea that we don't duchen outside of Eretz Yisrael is because there is the lack of the requisite simcha that is necessary to allow for Birchas Kohanim. Birchas Kohanim could only occur in a state of simcha. That level of daily simcha is not present in Chutz La'aretz, which I will say is such an incredible and overwhelming idea. And especially for us who are privileged, even though we live in Galus, we're privileged to live, Baruch Hashem, in such a comfortable Galus, and such a good Galus. I will say, a Jew in Galus is not besimcha. Even if I think I'm besimcha, I'm not in my fully actualized state of simcha. And because of that, we cannot have Birchas Kohanim except in some very unique situations. Musaf on Yom Tiv, right? Yom Kippur, which we'll talk about Yom Kippur as the day of Slicha B'Chapara. But that's the so again, I urge you to look at it on your own. What we just quoted was Siman Kuf Chaf Tes Sif Aleph, and then Siman Kuf Chaf Ches in the Ramah Mem Dalet. All right, let's go weiter. Says the Gemara. So much to talk about with this, but it'll have to suffice for now. Dechuli Alma Mias, and it's also 6:08, and we're still on Chavav days. Good. Dechuli Alma Mias Shikar Asar B'Nesias Kabayim and Hanimili. So I'll say, first of all, in general, this whole discussion is predicated on the idea that a kohen who drinks wine is not permitted to duchen. Where do you know that from? How do you know that a kohen who drinks wine is not permitted to duchen? I'm going to show you Mishum Bar Kafra Lama Nismacha Parshas Kohen Mevarich Le Parshas Nazir. Very simple. Rabbi Shimon Levi says, why is there a juxtaposition between Berchas Kohanim and Nazir? And Nazir, Lo Mar Ma Nazir Asr B'Yayin, to teach you just like a Nazir can't drink wine, Af Kohen Asr B'Yayin, so too a Kohen can't drink wine as well when he goes ahead and delivers the bracha. Good. Maskif lo. I will say, by the way, even more so, a Nazir is not just prohibited from drunkenness, right? A Nazir can't go ahead and consume any amount of wine. So to a Kohen can't consume wine and give the bracha. Maskif lo. Rabbi Zeir Rabbi Bar Zavda. If that's the case, Iman Nazir Asr B'Chartzon, of Kohen Asr B'Chartzon. If that's the case, then why don't you say, just like a Nazir can't eat a grape seed, so to a Kohen can't eat a grape seed, and if he does, he would be precluded from duchening as well. Because the pasuk Rabbi says l'sharso, to serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu, ulevarich b'shmo, to bless in His name. So we make a comparison between a kohen who duchens and a kohen who serves. Just like a kohen who goes ahead and serves in the Beis HaMikdash is permitted to eat a grape seed, Af kohen mevarich muter b'chartzon. So to a kohen who's delivering the bracha also can go ahead and eat a grape seed. Top of Chav Zayin. 1 second. So now you're comparing the kohen who gives the bracha to the kohen who serves in the Beis HaMikdash. Imam misharis bal mum lo. Af kohen mevarich bal mum lo. Well, if that's the case, then why don't you say that just as the kohen who has a mum, who has some type of blemish, cannot go ahead and serve in the mikdash, so too a kohen with a blemish can't duchen. Now, interestingly enough, Gemara says, ha-iskish l'nazir. No, because the Kohen who goes ahead and gives the bracha is compared to Nazir. Just like a Nazir could be a person with a mum, so too again a Kohen who delivers who duchens could also have a mum. As Rabbi say, it's not the same criteria for duchening and for avoda, right? Even mumin, which would go ahead and passel a Kohen for avoda, wouldn't necessarily passel him for duchening. Now that being said, there are certain things, those of us who are learning Mishnah Yomi, which by the way is an aside, we're beginning a new Masechta today, Maseches Moed Katan. It's a great time to jump in, it's so fantastic. The new bookmarks are over here, and there are actually a couple of Mishnayos still left as well. It's a wonderful, wonderful limud. So we just learned in Maseches Megillah that there are certain things which would disqualify a Kohen from going ahead and duchening. But again, for our purposes today, mum only disqualifies, for avoda doesn't disqualify by duchening. So the Gemara says, why? Because the Kohen who gives the bracha, ultimately, again, is compared to a Nazir. So the Gemara says, I don't understand. My chazes demakshis lakula akish lachuma. You're constantly making these hakeshos, you're constantly making these comparisons in order to yield a lenient result. Why not go ahead and make the comparisons to yield a chumradika result? To which the Gemara says, because these halachos are midrabanan, right? These halachos are midrabanan, ultimately again, and therefore we could dashne it lakula. So if Rabbi say essentially halacha lemaisa, what we learn is the fact that a Nazir can't drink wine before going ahead and duchening. Why? Because of the juxtaposition of Birchas Kohanim to the parsha of Nazir. Just like a Nazir can't drink wine, so too again a Kohen who is going to duchen can't drink wine as well. Good. We'll say, by the way, we know that halacha l'maisa is not just the Nazir his Kohen is duchening, by avoda as well. Shtuye yayin. If a Kohen were to drink wine and then do the avoda, that would invalidate the avoda as well. Good. We'll say, let's go right there. So we'll say, remember again, our Mishnah got into a very significant discussion regarding ma'amados. So says the Gemara. That's it. Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Perfect. Thank you, Mashi. So the Gemara. So the Gemara says ma'amados. So what are the ma'amados? So my ka'amar. So here we go. Eloin ma'amados. So remember again, we discussed the ma'amados. So I just want to point out the word ma'amados. In the Mishnah, the ma'amados are referring to as follows. There are 24, just a quick review, 24 mishmoros, which we're going to discuss today. 24 mishmoros. Those mishmoros are made up of who? Let's a little chazar. Made up of who? Right? Families. But which families? Remember again, up until yesterday, when we thought about a mishmar, we thought about Kohanic families. Yesterday, our understanding was dramatically enhanced, and mishmar really includes what? Kohanim, Leviim, Yisraelim. We'll go with Rashi's Pshat. Which Yisraelim were in the Mikdash? Which Yisraelim in the Mikdash? Those who lived in Yerushalayim. Everyone else, all the rest of the Yisraelim, gathered in local cities. We actually discussed that they were predefined gathering points. We'll get to that today. So the ma'amados that we're referring to over here really refer to those gatherings of Yisraelim. So the Gemara says, Matam tiknu ma'amados. Why did Chazal, or again, Shmuel and David, we'll see it's even earlier, Moshe Rabbeinu did it as well. Why were the ma'amados instituted? Because the pasuk says, command Klal Yisrael. The carbon tamid is a carbon tzibur. It belongs to all of Klal Yisrael. But how could it be that a person's carbon is going to be offered and he's not present? You have to be present when your carbon is offered. Then I both say, whether or not you actually have to be present when your carbon is offered is actually an interesting discussion. But the Gemara is saying is like this, that if a carbon is offered on behalf of Klal Yisrael should be there. But how could Klal Yisrael be present? So what happened? Hiskinu neviim harishonim esrim va'arba mishmoros. So the early prophets, which we're defining as, right now, Shmuel and David. Remember again, that's how Rashi defined it. Shmuel and David instituted 24 mishmoros. Al kol mishmar mishmar haya ma'ama b'Yerushalayim shel kohanim shel levim v'shel Yisraelim. And every mishmar, I will say, was made up of families of kohanim, levim, and Yisraelim in Yerushalayim. Higia zman mishmar la'alos. When it was time for a particular mishmar to ascend to Yerushalayim, Kohanim u'Leviim Olin liyerushalayim. So we'll say, so what happened? Kohanim and Leviim went up to Yerushalayim. Now, again, I want to point out something very interesting over here. If you notice, by the way, according to this brisa, the brisa doesn't mention who? Yisraelim, which is interesting, which is why many argue on Rashi. Rashi understood that there were Yisraelim who were present in the Mishmar, in the Beis HaMikdash. So many argue on that. And Rashi says, was it those who lived in Yerushalayim? Others say no. It was really just Kohanim and Leviim who had to be present in the Mikdash. The Yisraelim who are part of the Mishmar had no real obligation to ascend to Yerushalayim. In any event, Terabanan. So we'll say the Gemara goes weiter. Let's just also want to point out something very interesting. It's fascinating to see, just something to think about. The Mishnah in Pirkei Avos says that Asar Nisim, there were 10 miracles that were performed for our ancestors in the Beis HaMikdash. And one of the miracles was, V'lo Amar Adam Tsarli Hamakom Sha'alin B'Yerushalayim. No one ever said there wasn't enough room in Yerushalayim. There wasn't enough room. It is interesting to see over here that we don't ask all the Yisraelim to come up, right? So at first glance you would think, well, maybe it's a room issue, right? Maybe it's a space issue. But there's no space issue, because one of the miracles, so we'll say, it's not a din of a space issue, it's a din of a, life disruption issue. That ultimately, again, by Aliyah L'Regal, there's an obligation to go ahead and come up to Yerushalayim. So when HaKadosh Baruch Hu commands you to do something, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is going to allow you to fulfill His will. There's never, if HaKadosh Baruch Hu tells you to do something, I can do it. All of Klal Yisrael gets into Yerushalayim, don't worry about it. HaKadosh Baruch Hu will make it happen. By the Mishmoros, if there was a way of accomplishing the task without a major disruption to life, then ultimately, again, Chazal have an obligation to institute their halachas in the most non-disruptive fashion. So if you could accomplish the Yisrael's participation in the karbanos without disrupting everyday life in a more dramatic fashion, it's incumbent upon us to do that. Listen to this. Tan Rabbanon, Esrim va'arba mishmoros be'eretz Yisrael. U'shtemis Rabbi Yericho. Now the wording over here is very interesting. There were 24 mishmoros in Eretz Yisrael, okay, and 12 in Yericho. So the Gemara says, Shtemis Rabbi Yericho, nafshin l'tuva. If that's the case, it sounds like you don't have 24 mishmoros. Rather, how many do you have? 36. Ella, no. Shtemis Remehen B'Yericho. What it means is, Rabbosai, there were 24 mishmoros. 12 of them were stationed in Yericho. So Rabbosai, what this sounds like is like this. The Bryce is continuing on the idea that the Yisraelim did not ascend. Or, even according to Rashi, only the Yisraelim who lived in Yerushalayim were in Yerushalayim. Everyone else didn't go up. What ends up happening, the Gemara says, is the Yisraelim gathered in other cities. They gathered in cities throughout Eretz Yisrael. It happens to be 12 of the predetermined gathering points were in Yericho. We're in Yericho. I was here last, by the way, why Yericho? You remember again from Yuma what happened in Yericho? Remember in Yericho? So both said they were able to smell the ketoras in Yericho, right? Remember the sheep of Yericho used to sneeze because of the ketoras. There is this very strong connection between Yericho and the Beis HaMikdash. So if you're able to smell the ketoras in Yericho, it makes sense that the Yisraelim who were gathering again for their ma'amados, ultimately would gather in a place, didn't have to be Yerushalayim, but in a place that was connected to Yerushalayim, which is really beautiful. Okay, in any event, Higia Zman HaMishmar Lalos, when it was time for the Mishmar to ascend to Yerushalayim, Chatzi HaMishmar Haya'ola Me'eretz Yisrael Yerushalayim, V'Chatzi HaMishmar Haya'ola Me'Yericho, Kedei Sheyispeku Mayim Umazon La'achechem Sheb'Yerushalayim. So we'll say once again, the Brisa seems to indicate over here that halacha l'maisa, some of the Yisraelim would go, in fact, to Yerushalayim, and others would gather in Yericho. Now, why would they gather in Yericho? So this is interesting. In addition to performing the whole Ma'amad ceremony, they would also be responsible for providing provisions for the Ma'amad or for the Mishmar in Yerushalayim. So you will say, remember again, whenever the Mishmar comes upon Yerushalayim, Sa'alacha l'maisa again, that's a lot of people to support, right? That's a whole new group of people that are now gathering in Yerushalayim. Who's providing for that group? See, interestingly enough, it appears from this brisa that the obligation to provide provisions for the Mishmar in Yerushalayim fell upon the Yisraelim, in this case, who were gathered in Yericho. It's really quite fascinating. Amar Rabbi Yehuda, Amar Shmuel, Kohanim Levim v'Yisraelim ma'akvin es hakarban. So Rabbi Yehuda says, I will say that, by the way, you have to have a Mishmar present. And that Mishmar must be made up of Kohanim, Leviim, and Yisraelim. And if you don't have them present at the time that the karban is being offered, the karban is invalidated. B'masnisa tana, Reb Shimon Elazar, Kohanim, Leviim, uklei shir ma'akvin es hakarban. Others say, in an alternate version, Reb Shimon Elazar says, Kohanim, Leviim, and instruments are necessary for the validity of the karban. If you don't have instruments, your karban is not valid. So the Gemara says, what are they arguing about? Listen to this. Mar savar ikar shira bepeh, umar savar ikar shira bekli. They both say fundamental, fascinating, riveting machlokes about, everyone agrees, and this is so important, everyone agrees that what must accompany a karban? What must accompany a karban? Shira. You must have music, which I will say is so interesting. Music was an indispensable part ultimately of temple service. The shaila was, do we say ikar shira bepeh, that all you really needed was the Levium to sing, but you don't need instruments? Or did you need instruments as well? So that is a fundamental machlokes. Rabbi say the Rambam paskins ikar shira bepeh, that Allah l'maisa the Levium must sing the shira, and the ideal is to have instruments. But even if they didn't have instruments, they ultimately fulfill the dictum of shira, the obligation of shira. Amar Rav Chama bar Gurya Amar Rav. Both say first wide line. Moshe tikin lem liyisrael shmona mishmoros. So both say, watch this. Actually, the Gemara says, you thought, up until now, according to the Mishnah, we thought the Nevi'im Rishonim, the early prophets who instituted the Mishmaros were who? According to Rashi, who were they? Shmuel and David. In fact, it actually goes back to the times of Moshe Rabbeinu. Moshe Rabbeinu instituted 8 Mishmoros. How 8? Arba'a me Elazar v'dalid mi Itamar. 4 from Elazar, 4 from Itamar, which remember again were the 2 remaining sons, Nadav and Avihu, died in the Midbar. So Moshe Rabbeinu made 8 Mishmoros, 4 from Elazar, 4 from Itamar. Shmuel then further split them into 16 Mishmoros. David then made them into 24 mishmoros. Shnei Amar b'shnas ha'arbaim l'malchus David nidrushu v'yimtza b'hem giborei achayil b'azar gilad. Good. So according to this model, Moshe started with 8, Shmuel made them into 16, David made them into 24. Beautiful. So Moshe tigel l'nisah shmona mishmoros. Moshe originally made 8 mishmoros. Arba me Elazar, v'arba me Tamar. But David and Shmuel, then midin aser v'arba. Shnei Mar Hema Yasa David and Shmuel. R Avraham Menachem. Both say here in the second bite, it makes it sound like who made it into 24? It was David and Shmuel together. So which one is it? So both say in the first brisa, Moshe made 8, Shmuel made 16, David made 24. In brisa number 2, Moshe made 8, and David and Shmuel together made 24. To which the Gemara says, no, Hagi Kamar, Misoda shel David Shmuel haramasi ha'amidum al esrim va'arba. The second brisa is just shorthand, right? And sure, what it means to say is through David and Shmuel and David's collaborative efforts, it turned into 24 mishmoros. But it's saying the same thing as the first brisa. Moshe made 8, Shmuel made 16, David made them into 24. Tanya Yidach, another brisa. Moshe tiken em Yisrael sheish esrei mishmoros. We'll say an interesting another brisa. Moshe made 16 mishmoros. Shmona me Elazar, u'shmona me Itamar. 8 from Elazar, 8 from Itamar. Ukisherabu b'nei Elazar b'nei Itamar. And when the offspring of Elazar became more numerous than Itamar, chalkum v'hemidum al esrim v'arba. They then became 24 mishmaros. Shnei Amar, Vayimotzu b'nei Elazar rabim l'rosh giborim min b'nei Itamar vayichalkin b'nei Elazar roshin l'beis avos shisha asar u'b'nei Itamar l'beis avosam shmona v'omer beis av echad achuz le'Elazar v'achuz le'Itamar. My v'omer, what's the second pasuk coming to teach me? V'chi tema ke'echi d'nefishe b'nei Elazar hachanai v'nefishe b'nei Itamar. You might have thought the same way that the sons of Elazar exponentially increased, so too the sons of Itamar did so as well. Shmona me'ikara arba Tashma Beis Av echad achuz le'Elazar va'achuz le'itamar. Ultimately, Moshe tells us that as much as Elazar increased, Itamar did not increase at the same level. Tiyufta d'Rav Chama bar Guria. So ultimately, again, this would seem to refute to Rav Chama bar Guria. Amar Rav Chama bar Guria, Tanaihi, it's a machlokes Tanoim, va'ana da'amri kiyai tana da'amar shmona. And I hold, like the opinion that says that they originally ate mishmoros. Good. So again, what we have over here is just what we settle on is as follows. Here's what we learned, is that the Mishmoros, Krishna, the Mishmoros was an evolution. Moshe Rabbeinu starts, Shmuel continues, David finishes it off. A little bit of a machlokes as to what numbers you associate, again, with Moshe Rabbeinu, with Shmuel, and with David, but that's the evolution of the Mishmoros. Beautiful. Tan Rabbanan, Arba'a Mishmoros, Alam Agal Bosai. This is it's a dramatic Gemara. It's a traumatic and a dramatic Gemara. Tan Rabbanan, Arba'a Mishmoros, Alam Agola. I will say, when Ezra brought the Jewish people back from Bavel to rebuild the second Beis HaMikdash, the overwhelming majority of the Jewish population did not come up. And I will say, out of 24 Mishmoros. Now here, we're really referring to Mishmoros, ultimately, again, of Kohanim. Right? I will say, Leviim virtually did not ascend. They practically did not ascend. Out of the 24 Mishmoros of Kohanim, only 4 came back to Eretz Yisrael. Do you hear that? Only 4. Look at Rashi. Alu min Agola, bebayi sheni, vashar lo alu, shaharbe mi Yisrael, nishtayru, v'lo ratzu la'alos. I will say, absolutely overwhelmingly incredible. So ultimately, Ezra comes back, out of 24 Mishmoros that of Kohanim, only 4 came back. Who were the 4 that came back? So I will say, isn't it incredible that this goes back to what we said yesterday, that there are so many pieces of information that have been forgotten over the years. What we remember is who gave. We remember who gave, and we remember who stood up and was counted when it was necessary. When it was time to go back and build the Beis HaMikdash, we remember who came back, and we remember who stayed behind. Who came back? Yedaya, Charim, Pashchar, and Amar. So we'll say these are the 4 families. These are the 4 Mishmoros who came back. Everyone else stayed behind. Amdu Neviim Shebeneim. So we'll say, when we saw the 4 Mishmoros who came back, the Neviim stood up, and what happened? Amud Beis v'chilkum v'midum al esrim v'arba. So we'll say, listen to this. So now, we'll say, we have to have 24 Mishmoros, right? That was the institution of David HaMelech. You have to have 24 Mishmoros, 24 groups of Kohanim. But now you only have 4 families ascending. So what did they do? They made 4 into 24. They took each family, we're going to see, and divided each family into 6 parts. V'chilkum v'amidum al esrim v'arba. I will say, by the way, if you're one of those 4 families, you know what you say? You know what you say when that happened? Right? Shachianu. Because understand, for our Kohanim, that also represented a significant windfall, right? Because now think about this in just a moment, right? 4 families became 24. When it's your mishmar, also remember again, what do you get? You get hides, you get matnos kahuna. Remember again, Kohanim are supported by the gifts that they receive in the Beis HaMikdash. If now 4 families become 24, Baruch Hashem, that's a significant financial windfall as well. V'chilkum v'amidum al esrim v'arba. So they made 4 families into 24. Now, interesting enough, balalum v'naslum v'kalfi. So what did they do? Look at Rashi for just a moment. Balalum v'naslum v'kalfi. Rashi says, Kasvu kol chavdal chatichos klaf rashi mishmaros shechilkum yosindas. So here's what they did. They went ahead and they wrote on 24 pieces of paper the names, right, of now all the 24 newly divided families. So what happened? By Yedaya, so Yedaya came first. V'natla chelko v'chilik chaverov. And I will say Sheish, right? He drew his name, right? Yedaya came, and he drew 6 more lots, or really 5 more lots, or 6 lots altogether of his family. So we'll say, the Gemara is just pointing out over here that there was an incredible miracle. Look at Rashi. Ba Yedaya, Mishmar Shal Yedaya, Ba Echad Mehen, V'natal Chelko, V'chelik Kei Chatichos Klaf, Dahavilu Sheish, Umishaya Ola Biyado Rishon, Hayala Shabbos Rishon, Shabboseder Shaya Olim Biyado, Ahagach, Haya Ovdim Shabboseder. Listen to this. So Yedaya came. Remember again, Yedaya was the first Mishmar. So remember, they took the family of Yedaya, and they divided Yedaya now into 6 families. So there was Yedaya Aleph, Yedaya Beis, Gimel, Dalet, so on and so forth. Gimel, Dalet, Hey, Vav. Yedaya came, he drew his lot, and miraculously what happened? He drew the other 5 lots of his family. Again, remember, all the lots are mixed together. But miraculously, Yedaya drew his lot and the 5 others of his family. Now, the reason why the lots are important is because we have to decide who's week 1, who's week 2, who's week 3, who's week 4, who's week 5, who's week 6. So he came and he drew all of those lots. So Yedaya, which was 1 mishmar, has now become 6. Similarly again, Bachiram, Charim, V'natal, Chelko, V'chelik, Chaver of Sheish, V'chein Pashchar, V'chein Emar. So Rabbi say, this was the new 24 mishmaros of Klal Yisrael. Rabbi say, isn't this incredible? And we know their names. We know their names. Yedaya, Charim, Pashchar, V'emar. Because Rabbi saying, when you are called upon to take action for your people, and you do so, you are remembered forever. There may be many details which become fuzzy over the generations, but when you stand up and you are ready to be counted and you are ready to answer the call because your community, because your people, because your Beis HaMikdash needs you, you are remembered forever. I will say, and it's such an incredible yesod, because so often the call is put out for people to help, and we often assume that others will fill that role. Others will fill that role. Absolutely. Baruch Hashem. There's no shortage of great people who are willing to roll up their sleeves and do something. But the shaila is, do you want your mishpacha to be remembered for eternity as those who are willing to answer the call when they were called upon? Because those names are recorded in our Taanis, Daf Yomi. We'll say, we don't know what happened to the Yedaya, to the Charim, to the Pashchar, to the Emar family. But at the end of the day, Jews for all eternity will always remember their names. Such an incredible yisod. So the Gemara goes like there, V'chein hisnu neviim shebeneim. So I'll say, so now we have 24 new mishmoros. 24 new mishmoros made out of 4 families. V'chein hisnu neviim shebeneim, shafilu Yehoyadiv. It's really Yehoyariv. Rosh Mishmaros, Abosai. Now remember again, before the Beis HaMikdash was destroyed and we went into Galus, Yehoyariv, that's the name that it's changed to over here in the Agos V'tziyunim. It is, Yehoyariv. Yehoyariv was the name of the first Mishmar. He was the Av HaMishmaros. What happens if now Yehoyariv has a change of heart and he decides to leave Bavel and come back to Eretz Yisrael, and now he wants back in to the Mishmaros? V'chein hisnu leviim shebeneim shafilu Yehoyariv rosh mishmaros ola lo yidcha Yedaya mimkomo el Yedaya ikar v'Yehoyariv tafelo. They will say, even if Yehoyariv decides to come back, will we give him a spot in the mishmaros? Sure. Will he assume his role as the head of the mishmaros? Absolutely not. Instead, what we'll do is, Rabbi say, we'll take 1 shift away from Yehoyada, right? From Yedaya, right? From Yedaya. We'll take 1 shift away from Yedaya. Look at Rashi's one. Lo yitchi Yedaya, afilu mitchila, ali Yehoyariv, elakom shon sanas Yedaya, kol savod Yehoyariv, ba, v'or acharei mishmar echad. So, v'shisha v'Yedaya. So what we do is, if Yehoyariv comes back, let's say Yehoyariv comes back, we'll take away 1 shift from Yedaya, right? We'll make Yedaya into 5. We'll give 1 shift to Yehoyariv, and he will become a chelik of Yedaya. So that's what we'll do. We'll fit him in. But you will say, such an incredible yisod. When you are called upon, when you are offered an opportunity to do something great, if you take it, fantastic. If you don't take it, more often than not, it's not going to be waiting for you when you decide to get around to it. I will say, it's such an incredible yisod. There are incredible opportunities to do beautiful things each and every day. Sometimes we just say, too busy. It's important, I'll get around to it. And when I know, I'm machshir. It's important enough, I just can't do it right now. I'll get to it. And when you finally get to it, more often than not, the opportunity is not there. Can you be finagled in? Can you do something? Sure. Yehoyariv decides to come back. Will we find him a place in the Mishmaros? Will we find him a place? Of course. Of course we'll find him a place. We'll fit him into Yedaya. But are you going to get back your elevated status of being the Rosh HaMishmaros? No. Do you know why? Because when opportunity knocked, you didn't answer the door. And when you don't answer the door, opportunity simply goes elsewhere. Can you recapture it in some small way? Some small way, yes. But in a dramatic way, Absolutely not. Such an incredible yisod. The Yisod Shava also Mishmar Miskansa Mari and the Kar Masa Bereshis. So let's remember again, we're jumping back now to the Israelim. So the Israelim are gathered. Now we know a bit more. Where are they gathered, by the way? Where are they gathered? Where are they gathered? 12 of them are gathered where? In Yericho. We just read this. In Yericho. Right? 12 of them are gathered in Yericho. Right? According to Rashi, some chelik of them are in Yerushalayim, and others seem to be gathered in other places of Eretz Yisrael. So remember again, what are they doing? What are they doing when they're gathered? So one of the major things they're doing is they're reading Ma'aseh Bereshis. Right? They're reading the story of creation. Why? Because they will say, were it not for the Ma'amados, the earth would not exist. Now what does that mean? Shneimar, Vayomer Hashem Elokim, Bama Edah Ki Ir Hashana. We'll say, Avraham Avinu says by the bris ben Absarim, he says, Kadosh Baruch Hu, how do I know that my children will really merit Eretz Yisrael? How do I know? How do I know they're going to be deserving of it? Amar Avram, Ribono Shalom, Shem Yisrael Chotin Lefanecha, Ata Osam Kidra HaMabra Kidra HaFlaga. So Avraham Avinu said, Kadosh Baruch Hu, right now you love me, right? But I'm only one guy. But one day I'm going to be a nation, and maybe my children will misbehave. How do I know that you won't do to them like you did to the generation of the flood or the generation of the dispersion? Amar lei lav. Kadosh Baruch Hu says, no, I promise you, I won't destroy them like I destroyed the generation of the flood or the Dor HaFlaga. Amar lefanu Ribon Shalom, hodi'eni b'ma'ir Hashana. HaKadosh Baruch Hu, thank you for the promise, but tell me, through what zechus will I inherit Eretz Yisrael? What zechus will I inherit Eretz Yisrael? Amar lei. So he says to Avraham Avinu, so kechali egla mishuleshes ve'ez mishuleshes. So this is the bris ben Absarim. HaKadosh Baruch Hu tells him, bring me a calf, bring me a goat. And remember again, what does Avraham Avinu do? He splits them in half, puts one on each side of the path, and the Shechina literally barrels down the middle of there, right? The fiery ball, the Shechina barrels down the middle. So we'll say, so HaKadosh Baruch Hu was telling him in the schus of the karbanos. That's what HaKadosh Baruch Hu was alluding to. In the schus of the karbanos, ultimately again, your children will inherit Eretz Yisrael. Which I will say, if you think about it, by the way, so what does this mean? What is the schus of the karbanos? So I will say the whole yisod of a karban is a twofold aspect. Number one, karban is from Lashon Karov, right, to come close. So the reason I offer up an animal is not because HaKadosh Baruch Hu needs my animal, but it's my way of creating a closeness to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, giving something of mine to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So number one, the schus of the karbanos is the process of constantly trying to come closer to the Ribono Shel Olam. I will say the life of a Jew is constant karban, constant kravos, constant karov. Every single day, I'm just trying to come closer. What can I do to come closer to the Ribono Shel Olam? What can I do? What can I take on? What can I change? What can I stop doing? What can I start doing? What can I do better? That's my job, right? Kirvas Elokim Tovli. What I want more than anything is the closest. Avraham Avinu says, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, in what merit are my children going to constantly hold on to Eretz Yisrael? And Eretz Yisrael doesn't just mean a geographic location. It still represents, again, a connection. In what zechus will my children hold on to a connection to you? Kadosh Baruch Hu says, karbanos. Karbanos are the key. Why karbanos? Number one, karban represents a constant desire to come closer and closer. And number two, what else does a karban represent? Sacrifice. See, I both say in our lexicon, sacrifice is a bad word. I don't want to sacrifice anything. Right? I want to have my cake and eat it too. My job is to make things as easy as possible and not have to sacrifice. Sacrifice is part of spiritual growth. We'll say, and life is filled with sacrifices. You choose to eat a bowl of cereal for breakfast, you've given up the omelet, right? Everything is, I mean, I guess not, you could have both, right? But Lamaisa, life is filled with sacrifices. When you choose A, you sacrifice B. I will say, and life is all about making the right sacrifices in order to be able to achieve a closeness to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So there's a constant pining, and what can I do to come closer? There's a willingness to sacrifice the things that are holding me back from that closeness. It is that zechus, says HaKadosh Baruch Hu to Avraham Avinu, as embodied in the karbanos, that gives us Eretz Yisrael, that gives us Torah, that gives us a connection. So Avraham Avinu says, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that's fine when the Beis HaMikdash is standing, because then there are karbanos. I will say what happens when the Beis HaMikdash is not standing. Right? What happens during that time when there is no Beis HaMikdash and there aren't karbanos? Amar lo, HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, don't worry, kivar tikanti lahem seder karbanos. Even when the Beis HaMikdash is not standing, it's okay. I have established for them seder karbanos. I will say seder karbanos means literally the reading of karbanos. Bizman shikorin bahen. When we read karbanos, HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, when they read them before me, I will say, when you read karbanos, it is as if we have offered the karbanos, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, Vani mochel lahem al kol avonosehem. And ultimately, again, I forgive them for all of their sins. I will say, do you understand what the Gemara just said? So Avraham Avinu says, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, great. The schus of karbanos is what gives us Eretz Yisrael. What happens when there is no Beis HaMikdash? When there is no Beis HaMikdash, I will say, I don't have a Beis HaMikdash, but you know what I do have? You know what I do have? I have a siddur. I have a siddur. And I will say, in that siddur is a section of karbanos. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, when I read, HaKadosh Baruch Hu says it, when I say karbanos, HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, I will treat it as if you have actually offered up all of the karbanos. And I will forgive you for all of your averos. I will forgive you for all of your averos. I will say, we have to say karbanos. We have to say karbanos. Now I'm going to be very honest. It's most probably not going to take place in the context of Shachris during the week. But say it before davening, say it after davening, say part of it during the day. I will say, a person, a yid has to say, Parshas HaKiyor, Parshas HaTalmud, Parshas HaKitoras, Ezehu Makoman. You have to say it every single, you have to. You have to. How can a yid not say karbanos after we just read this Gemara? And by the way, to a certain degree, and it's going to sound totally counterintuitive, it's even a greater opportunity when there is no Beis HaMikdash. Why? Because when there's a Beis HaMikdash, you can't just roll in and offer whatever karbanos you want to offer up. You can only offer up whatever karbanos you're going to be obligated to offer up. I will say, when you say Ezehu Makoman, it's every single karban. Every single day I could offer up every single karban. Every single day I could offer up a karban pesach. Every single day I could offer up a bachar. Every single day I could offer up a shlamim. Every single day I could offer up a chatos, right? You say Parsha of Kitoras, only the Kohen Gadol could offer up the Kitoras. But no, when I say Kitoras, I could offer up a Zav. I'll say, this is what the Gemara is telling us. I've given you a weapon. All too often, karbanos are neglected. We just simply go from brachos to Rabbi Yishmael, which again, in the context of sometimes like weekday morning davening, we have to do that in order to be able to move. Unfortunately, it's b'zeres apecha tocha lechem. But there's 6 minutes that you can find during some other part of the day. Wake up a little earlier, go ahead, stay a little bit later after davening if you can, or just some other time during the day to be able to say the parshas of karbanos. Parshas HaKiyor, Parshas HaTalmud, Parshas HaKitores, and Ezehu Makoman. Rabbi say it is an indispensable part of the day. Because who doesn't need this bracha? Kadosh Baruch Hu says, say the karbanos, and I will forgive you for every single avera. It's incredible. So we'll say the people of the Mishmar would daven for the karban of their brethren, that it should be received beratzon. Va'anshe ma'amod miskansin lebeis hakneses, v'yoshvin dalet ta'anios, b'shini b'shabbos, b'shlishi, b'revi, b'chamishi. So let's listen to this. So interestingly enough, the Gemara over here is making a distinction between Anshe Mishmar and Anshe Ma'amad. Anshe Mishmar sounds like the people who are gathered in the Beis HaMikdash. Their job was to go ahead and daven ultimately again that the karbanos should be accepted. The Anshe Ma'amad, they would gather in the local shuls and they would also daven and they would fast 4 fast days. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Remember again, we spoke about they didn't fast on Friday, they didn't fast on Sunday, so they didn't fast on Shabbos. I will say, we'll have to stop over here. We'll pick up with and I will say this incredible Gemara tomorrow. We're going to discuss what they davened for on each respective day. So we'll stop here. We're going to start, I'll see what time we'll start in so we'll stay tuned on the WhatsApp. I will say, Shkayach everyone. Shkayach.